Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shobowale. There's some relief for Kenyans as the health ministry is now allowing people to not wear face masks in open places. The government has, however, encouraged people attending events indoors to wear face masks and while traveling using public means of transport. The measures of social distancing and hand washing will remain in place to reduce the spread of coronavirus. Compulsory isolation of confirmed cases has also been stopped. Indoor meetings and in-person worship in full capacity will resume as long as all those attending are fully vaccinated. The Health Minister, Mutahi Kagwe, says the changes follow a significant decline in COVID-19 infections in the country. More than 7 million people have been fully vaccinated in the country, comprising 28.5% of the general population of adults. Africa's top public health agency has agreed a memorandum of understanding with U.S. pharmaceuticals company Pfizer to bring supplies of its antiviral COVID-19 pills to the continent. Dr. John Nkengasong, head of the Africa Centers for Disease Control, says the MOU is with the African Union's legal office and once cleared, a formal announcement would be made. Data from a mid to late stage study in November suggested Pfizer's Paxlovid pill was nearly 90% effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths compared to a placebo in adults at high risk of severe illness. Dr. Nkengasong says African countries should be using a combination of public health measures, vaccines and testing, as well as treatments like Paxlovid in their efforts to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic this year. He also expresses concern that vaccination rates remain very low in many African countries. And speaking of vaccinations, the global failure to deliver enough COVID-19 vaccines to developing countries is prolonging the pandemic and causing tens of thousands of preventable deaths every week. And that's according to the UN Human Rights Council. According to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, to date, more than 10.5 billion vaccine doses have been administered globally, enough to protect the entire world population from severe symptoms, hospitalization and death. Despite this achievement, Michelle Bachelet insists that the grim reality is that only around 13% of people in low-income countries have been vaccinated, compared with almost 70% in high-income countries.
The world has been profoundly fortunate to have had effective COVID-19 vaccines developed at an unprecedented pace. Science has saved millions of lives and livelihoods, but we have failed to administer the vaccines in a fair and equitable manner. Right now, this failure is prolonging the pandemic. Delayed vaccination may mean a lost decade for development. We risk losing an entire generation of young people to poor education and unemployment. Countries will become less resilient to fresh crises and shocks, and discontent at the human rights consequences of pandemic-related measures has the potential to escalate societal tensions and violence, which are growing around the world. While there has been some recent progress on closing the vaccine equity gap, we need to further accelerate this effort by supporting COVAX to ensure timely, predictable, and effective access to vaccines to all countries. We no longer have the excuse in the developed world that production constraints limit our generosity, as reports surface of tens of millions of excess vaccines expiring unused.
And away from the COVID-19 pandemic, Cyclone Gombe continues to approach Mozambique's northern Nampula province and is expected to land into the country through the district of Missouri. President Felipe Nyusi has called for increased alert by the authorities. The cyclone is already being felt with heavy rains and strong winds. Officials expected to have wind speeds of more than 200 kilometers per hour and rain above 200 millimeters, accompanied by thunderstorms that will last for 3 days. And journalist Yvonne Sundu joins us now for more. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Last time we spoke, we were speaking about Storm Anna, and now Cyclone Gombe is approaching. How are authorities preparing? What measures have been put in place to protect life and property?
Thank you so much, Tani. Actually, as I'm speaking to you right now, tropical cyclone Gombe has landed in Malawi, in Msanje and Chikwawa districts, to be precise. These are districts that are on the southern tip of Malawi, bordering Mozambique. And also, they are in the low-lying areas where the biggest river in the country, Shire, empties itself into Zambezi River, which is in Mozambique. So that is the reason why you find that every time we are talking about floods in Malawi, we are talking of these two districts. So yes, Gombe is in Malawi currently, and according to the Department of Climate Change and Meteorological Services, we are expecting rainfall of 100 millimeters in the next 24 hours, with so many districts, apart from those two that I've mentioned, likely to be affected. And in terms of preparations, there's so many precautionary measures rather that have been lined up. Firstly, people in these districts that are going to be affected have been asked to move from low-lying areas to upper hill. And then there's also the issue of advising people to avoid crossing flooded rivers. And the Department of Disaster and Risk Management has already deployed a team in the districts of Msanje and Chikwawa. These are there just to work on in terms of rescue efforts. And they are also working hand in hand with the Malawi Police Service, Malawi Defense Force, and Malawi Red Cross and Society. So far, that's the situation in Malawi.
And what's the weather like currently where you are?
Where I am is hot. Actually, it's supposed to be our rainy season. The rainy season is going towards the end, but it's very hot. Malawi has experienced partial drought of some sort in other districts or in other parts of the country, despite the fact that there was heavy rains because of tropical cyclone Anna. And the rainfall pattern has been affected in such that instead of having normal rainfall, the pattern has been affected because some parts have not received adequate rains, and in other areas, the rains are a bit, almost average. So right now in Lilongwe, it's very hot. You can't even believe that this is the rainy season in Malawi.
All right, let's speak about the economic impact now. Economically, what support is being offered to people, especially many who are still recovering from, Storm Anna and, of course, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic?
According to the Department of Disaster Management Risk Affairs, so far there are some camps that are still up and running in the districts of Chikwawa and Sanje, despite that tropical cyclone Anna affected half of Malawi. So people in the other districts have moved back to their areas, and life is at least moving towards normalcy, but not in Nsanje and Chikwawa, where we still have those camps, which are yet to be decommissioned. The plan by the department was in the next few weeks to start decommissioning the camps by way of giving people that are still living in these camps with a bit of a startup package where they were going to get tents for shelter, as well as food, as in general purpose food, and nutritious food for children, because even children have been affected. Now, with the coming in of the tropical cyclone Gombe, that is bound to be slowed down because some of the areas that were affected in Nsanje and Chikwawa are likely going to be affected with them. The heavy rain that is expected in Malawi, especially in the southern parts of the country, in the next 24 to 36 hours or to 48 hours. So economically, Malawi has been battered, but when we want to appreciate or to understand the impact of the tropical cyclone Anna, we are looking mostly at the two districts of Nsanje and Chikwawa, where people up until today, like I said, they are still living in camps. Imagine there is a village that was completely washed away, and people that survived that tragedy looking at moving to other parts within the districts, but moving to other parts of the district where they might not really be flood prone, so that at least life has to be back to normal. But for those people in the camps right now, it is going to take a bit of time for life to move back to normalcy.
All right, then, journalist Yvonne Sundu, thank you so much for joining us on the program, and do stay safe.
Thank you, Tammy.
In South Africa, most South African political parties have approved the choice of Justice Raymond Zondo as the new Chief Justice, citing his long experience in the judiciary. But Julius Malema's Economic Freedom Fighters Party has dismissed Justice Zondo as a divisive force. President Cyril Ramaphosa on Thursday announced Justice Zondo's appointment after a lengthy process which started with the public submitting names of their preferred candidates to the presidency. And to the Ukraine-Russia conflict, President Ramaphosa says that South Africa has been approached to play a mediation role in the conflict. Mr. Ramaphosa did not say who had made the approach, but says he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday and urged him to seek a mediated solution to the conflict. South Africa's position on the conflict came under the spotlight last week after it abstained from voting on a UN resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, several families in South Africa are celebrating the safe return of 10 students who fled the war in Ukraine. They were received by some government officials and facilitating partners from the private sector at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. Our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, reports.
They may have been part of this crowd fleeing to safety from Ukraine. After the ordeal, they and their waiting family members must be relieved their home. While some were not quite prepared for the welcoming cameras, others had a few words to share.
Look, we've just witnessed the first student that arrived. He looked overwhelmed, he looked traumatized, to be honest, and I don't blame him. Imagine having to flee a country, not know where you're going, not know when you're going to return home, if you're going to return home.
At a point, no, I didn't expect to be back. I didn't think that we would make it out, but thank God. The Holy Spirit is such a great help, and yeah, we're at a point of safety, so that's a great thing.
I'm sorry, how has been the last 2 weeks been?
Hell. The closest thing to hell I've ever felt, but yeah.
Very difficult, like we couldn't sleep, we were praying day and night, yes, but yeah, through God's grace he kept us and she's here.
Expectant family members dotted the arrival hall of the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg. For Non-Tobago Sibeko, it has been hectic worrying about her husband, who was actually visiting Ukraine when the war began.
And the wait was difficult, I must say, but it is how we are made to carry the weight.
The South African government, working with some private sector organizations, effected this evacuation. They hope to bring whoever is left safely home as soon as possible.
Firstly, we were able to get them out into neighboring countries when the attacks started taking place. Our ambassador on the ground in Ukraine is Ambassador Andrei Grunewald. He worked very closely and coordinated with the support of other volunteers, to move our people into the neighboring countries. And then once they were in the neighboring countries, it became very clear to us that some of them don't have the means to return home. Their families couldn't afford to bring them back. So government had to step in, and then we coordinated and got the support of the private sector to then finance the project. And this is why we were able to buy tickets and bring them home.
The story has ended well for this batch of returnees, and it hopefully will for the next batch, expected at the weekend. Trauma counseling is expected, and the next priorities for the students among them may now be how to continue with their education as soon as possible. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Children in schools across the country are being equipped with knowledge and skills to enable them drive innovations and prefer solutions to challenges. At the first Lego League Championship in Robotics held in Abuja, the kids were taught through a different approach to education that used robotics as a tool. Take a look.
These are almost 600 students from the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, and they're all gathered for the 2022 first Lego League Championship in Robotics. The theme, Cargo Connect, was aimed at providing digital solutions to the movement and handling of cargo from the manufacturer to the final destination. And the children between the ages of 9 and 16-year-old explored the unlimited potential of robotics as it applies to the theme.
The goal of the program is simple. It's to empower the next generation of Nigerian students to become critical thinkers and problem solvers. We want to start to develop learners who learn and not learners who remember.
We know that in the world today there are new technologies, robotics, programming, coding, artificial intelligence, which are being used in various industries around the world. And this event is helping our children to develop those skills. We are preparing our children for the future. We know that there are new skills, there are new technologies these days, and there are new jobs which they will need to fit into, not necessarily the other traditional jobs.
Selected Unity and private schools participated in the competition, which the students say has influenced them positively.
The robotics have helped me in knowing different kind of technologies I don't know about. So if I can, I want to make a machine that can help the cargo transportation and stuff like that.
Once I see a robot that I coded myself doing things I commanded it to actually like accomplish missions, it fills me with this joy that makes me know that I might not have a loud voice, but my coding speaks for me.
In the aspect of my own knowledge, I try to use my own critical thinking and ideas on finding and solving our problems, the solutions to problems of how to relate to this cargo transportation, trying to figure out how things, discovering, explore with all my robotics team members and other things.
The first Lego League Championship is organized annually to expose the children to 21st century technology and skills.
The rise of smart retail technologies is changing the retail landscape, offering vast opportunities to push the bounds of operational excellence. Success in the ecosystem now calls for an integration of physical locations with digital experiences, thereby giving rapid access to consumer preferences. The pandemic accelerated the move to digital platforms in Africa, and Nigeria seems to be one of the most promising countries in the region in terms of potential market opportunity. And Oluwashino Oderinde, a technology enthusiast in retail businesses, joins us now to discuss this further. A warm welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
So some say the full potential of technology in retail is yet to be realized. Do you agree with this?
Definitely.
Okay, so but how are brands maximizing the available tech to produce useful features for consumers?
For now, a lot of brands have not been able to maximize that because they are just focusing on consumers. And you're supposed to focus on the retail ecosystem to be able to solve that problem. You don't just focus on consumers, you have to focus on the entire retail ecosystem from the manufacturers to the wholesalers, retailers, and then consumers before you can really solve that problem.
Okay, but looking at the prevalence of shopping via social media platforms and the numbers of merchandise brick-and-mortar stores, would you say retailers are investing in both at the same levels, and why?
Well, not at all. They are not. And the reason is because, you see, most businesses have a lot of challenges that they have to overcome in their physical stores. And that would not give them the ample opportunity to be able to explore the online space that they have, you know, for a lot of people to know about their business. So it's a big no. They are not investing at the same level in the online space as they are investing in their mortar and brick stores.
And so what are some of these common challenges that retail businesses face daily?
Okay, so fundamentally there are two. The first one is keeping track of your sales and your expenses daily. And then the second thing is managing your inventory. I've worked in the last 2 years at the national level with ACPN. ACPN is the Association of Community Pharmacists, and a lot of retail business owners in the FMCG space, that's supermarkets and wholesalers, retailers, and I can tell you for sure that these challenges are the things that actually tops the list. Issues with tracking their sales daily, and then issues with them managing their inventories.
And just very quickly, in what ways is technology helping to solve some of these issues that you mentioned?
Okay,
or
so
what technologies are available to help solve some of these issues?
Yes, basically there are solutions right now that are solving these problems, but most of them are not able to cut the mark. And the reason is because most of them are really archaic. They use very old technology. They are very cumbersome. And most of them, most times, they've not been able to do what they're supposed to do for businesses, like I said, because they are really expensive. And then because they have to focus on running with power, and that makes them unfit for the kind of society that we are. But then there's a good news because there's an emergence of a mobile-based technology that helps people to actually track their sales and manage their inventory on their mobile phones, and then with some very little mobile devices. Now, you can imagine I have like a business that I know on the island. She spent over 2 million naira, to set up a point of sale system. And then right now we have a mobile-based technology that you can just spend 10,000 naira for a whole year, and then you can solve that same problem even to the power of 10. So that's what this mobile-based technology is helping a lot of businesses right now in Nigeria and Africa to be able to solve these fundamental problems so that they can really grow, and then they can have a better business.
All right, then, well said, Mr. Oluwashino Oderinde, a technology enthusiast in retail businesses. Thank you so much for your thoughts on the program.
Thank you so much.
And finally on the program, the clam divers of Congo's Kimwabi village have special permission to fish waters in the protected mangrove marine park. However, there are tensions between their traditional livelihoods and efforts to protect the ecosystem.
In Kimwabi, the streets aren't paved with gold, but with clam shells. The village is located in Democratic Republic of Congo's Mangrove Marine Park, where the Congo River meets the Atlantic Ocean. It's a protected reserve, but members of the Asolongo ethnic group who live here have special permission to fish the waters. But there is tension between their way of life and efforts to protect the mangroves. In the maze of waterways that surround the village, Stefan Nzuzi Indeka is diving for clams. He says it's dangerous work.
Many people have died fishing for clams. Sometimes people encounter crocodiles in the water, but more often it is the result of somebody casting a spell or curse. When you make this curse, they go to the river and don't come back. It's not that frequent, but it happens.
But with the high risk comes high reward. Zuzi fills his dugout canoe with prawns, fish, and the clams known as bibwati. He's able to feed his family and has enough left over to sell in the nearby town, earning between $40 and $100 per month. Clams are also abundant that once cooked, the discarded shells are used to pave the alleyways between bamboo huts, bleached white in the sun and clinking underfoot. But residents here are also having to adapt to restrictions aimed at protecting the mangrove ecosystem. The park's management has tightened the rules, banning charcoal made from the mangroves and the consumption of endangered turtles.
And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shobowale. Have a lovely weekend.